right, we are live. Black people in cryptocurrency.
Yay, we're back. We got a fantastic show. We actually have our guest today. It's actually another admin of Black people in cryptocurrency, but you don't really see him because he's probably among the busiest people in blockchain that it is. So we have Wainaina Karanja, who we know is also as John Karanja, and he is the engineering lead of Whive, which is the first, not only the first Black-led, but the first African-led blockchain, decentralized proof of work blockchain. So let's welcome him, Wainaina Karanja.
Welcome.
Asante sana. Thank you for having
me. Karibu. That's the only Swahili I know, and I learned it from Wainaina. I was like, I never knew how to respond to that. But before we kick off, and we're gonna, this is kind of like about his life, his connection to blockchain and Bitcoin in general. But some popular topic in the news is actually relevant to Wainaina's expertise. So there's a certain individual in this space who is known for his electric cars, and he's also known for shooting up gas-fueled rockets into space, has said that for his electric cars, he would no longer accept Bitcoin because it is not environmentally friendly. So Wainaina, do you have any thoughts about this certain individual and this kind of this trend? Because it did appear in our group today that somebody wanted to know about renewable energy related coins, because there's this concept that Bitcoin's proof of work is not environmentally friendly. So you want to speak on that, and then we can segue into your Whive and your background.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, the said individual is indeed quite misguided. I think I can summarize it that way, because if you talk about Bitcoin mining, you have to put it in context of what it's doing. It's protecting and securing an ecosystem where value and a lot of value to that is going to be stored. And we're talking about sort of the money over IP, or the Internet of Money. So what happens is in Bitcoin, we have something called proof of work, which is a consensus algorithm that's built into the Bitcoin protocol or through the Bitcoin software that allows entities and people around the world to contribute computing power, or what we call hash power, to secure the network. And originally, if we went 10 or 11 years back, people were contributing computing power from their laptops. So people were mining Bitcoin with their laptops and getting rewarded 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So what that did is it incentivized people to create this network, which we call the Bitcoin network, that now has provided a platform where we can now transfer value over the internet without any censorship, and from any part of the world to another part of the world, or even to space and back to Earth. So it's an interplanetary monetary system, and because we are trusting it to have a lot of value, it has to be secured with a lot of hash power. So I looked up the statistics. I think the Bitcoin mining uses as much electricity as the country of Denmark. So it's not even as much electricity as the banks and the data centers use around the world. So if you look at all the big cities on Earth, talk about New York, which has a lot of banking institutions, they build huge towers with many floors, and just to offer what you call banking services. And these are replicated in every major city on Earth. So how much energy is being used to support that ecosystem versus how much energy is being used to support a digital ecosystem that is even much more efficient and much more liberating for people across the world, and in particular Black people. So that's the first thing I would say, is that you cannot compare the cost-benefit analysis of Bitcoin being a digital monetary network and the traditional legacy system, which is built on brick and mortar. The second point, which is for me is the most important point, because I created a startup around this idea, is using proof of work, whether Bitcoin or whether whive, to drive adoption of energy access across the world. So today, Bitcoin uses 75% of renewable energy. And the reason it uses, the reason the majority of the energy it uses is renewable is because it's more sustainable to use renewable energy versus to burn coal, for example. So you find the big Bitcoin miners in China, they're incentivized to look for underutilized hydroelectric dams. These are dams that were built by the local governments that could not transmit the power to the cities because there was either no demand, the cities are ghost cities, or the cities are too far away. So it would be too expensive to transfer that money to transfer that electricity from the dams to the cities. So basically, what Bitcoin has done is it has subsidized the creation of those ecosystems of hydroelectric dams across China and made them more viable, so that when people plug into those hydroelectric dams and start mining Bitcoin, they create local economies where value is being created and people are starting to make money through mining and selling the Bitcoin. The other thing is, if you come now back home to Africa, we have even bigger resources in terms of hydroelectric resources. We have the Grand Inga Dam in DR Congo, which has a potential of 45,000 megawatts, which is enough electricity to serve the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. But that project has not been able to be developed because the government of Congo does not have enough resources to develop that resource. So what they could do is just follow the example of the Chinese and use that power to mine Bitcoin and make that dam a viable entity. And then from there, we can now begin talking about distributing this power to Congo and the rest of Africa. So that's what my company does. We're doing that research, and where possible, we're advising these government entities to sort of begin thinking this way. Of course, we are working at a micro level with the whive project, which we'll go into a bit later. But for me, I would say the idea that Bitcoin is wasting energy is totally false.
Wow. So, we're only a few minutes in, so everyone is watching. Wainaina Karanja has already answered the question and kind of myth busted the whole scenario that Bitcoin proof of work is somehow not environmentally sustainable. He made some very important analogies in terms of the whole hashing power pretty much equates to the country of Denmark, and that 75% of the hashing power of Bitcoin is already renewable by the Chinese, who actually used hydrogen dams, and that there's actually a solution on the African continent, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, of using that same system, as long as if Africans have the resources to be able to set this up, they can actually power sub-Saharan Africa alone, in based on one dam in the Great Lakes region. That was a lot of information, but going into your particular background, so let's back up a little bit, because you have a number of different properties. You have BitHub.Africa, which is the oldest, not only the oldest Black accelerator, and for those who don't know, an accelerator is kind of like an organization or a group that provides education and business resources for those entering into a specific sector, in this case, Bitcoin and blockchain. But then on top of that, you're among the lead engineers of an actual blockchain, whive, proof of work. And then on top of that, you're here as CEO of Melanin.Solar, a company to go on top of that blockchain that's specific to a renewable energy solution for people in tropical regions, not just Africa in general. So can we back up a little bit, way back into the elementary of how you got involved in Bitcoin and why you took the direction that you have taken with these entities?
Yeah, for sure. So I got involved into Bitcoin back in late 2013. I believe it was December 2013, after the first big run in the Bitcoin price. So I actually got in at the top. So it was quite bad from a financial point of view.
Like
It's a good
so,
learning experience, right?
Yes. So and how I ended up in the space is I'd been running a startup called CrowdPesa that was trying to do m-commerce, sort of like Amazon on the mobile phone in Kenya. And together with my co-founder, we were trying to integrate into a very popular system called M-Pesa, which is the first, what I'd call the world's first digital currency on the mobile phone that has been in use in Kenya for the 15 years. And we were trying to plug it, at that time it was about 6 years old. So we were trying to plug into that ecosystem and drive e-commerce sales on the CrowdPesa platform. That startup unfortunately failed because we ran out of finance, the usual reasons why startups fail. And in that process, my co-founder, Mr. Chris Kakoba, who's from Congo, he came across a conference called AfriCoin. And he really bugged me and told me, John, let's go for this conference. I think it will be interesting for us. So at the conference, there were these guys who were talking about Bitcoin and how it was an internet currency. And, we began to see, like, if we knew about Bitcoin, we could probably have plugged it into our system and we wouldn't have to have shut down our platform. So that led me to the Bitcoin white paper. I studied it for about a month. Those days, there were no YouTube videos on Bitcoin, or there were very few. So you had to go and read the white paper to understand exactly what this technology was. And of course, when you read the white paper, you sort of got blown away by the concepts of blockchain consensus and Byzantine General's problem, and all those innovations that were in Bitcoin. I had a sort of a computer science background, so I could relate with some of the information in the white paper. And then I just went full into Bitcoin. Went for the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam in 2014 as a speaker. And the rest is history. We began to do Bitcoin meetups in Nairobi. Eventually, Chris and I founded BitHub.Africa, and we took Bitcoin meetups to 7 countries across Africa, and really began together with others seed the Bitcoin communities across those countries to get them moving. So, funny enough, at the Amsterdam conference, I met Mr. Sinclair Skinner.
Skinner. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I met also Sister Alakanani as well. So she's known as the Bitcoin lady. She's very famous from Botswana. Yes. And we were the only 3 Black people in a conference of 3,000.
That sounds normal. That happens in New York. Check. Good. It's unfortunate when it happens.
Yeah, so we had to talk to each other to see who these other Black people were. And since then, we've been buddies. We've done a lot of work together with the Black Blockchain Summit. And sort of the next stage was now when Sinclair Skinner was running his startup in Zimbabwe called BitMari. And he had just gotten a grant to fund diasporas sending money to people in Zimbabwe. And I was helping him sort of figure out the technical details of that system. And I went to Zimbabwe, and I discovered most of the people who are using that grant were using it to fund solar water pumps. So that's how I realized that there was a connection between financial access and solar access. So people need money fundamentally in Africa to access energy, because we're still using biogas, we're still using kerosene lamps. I myself, for a time, even in Nairobi, studied on what you call the kerosene lamps because of power rationing. So for me, I immediately went back to my childhood and made that connection that we have a very huge problem of lack of access to energy in Africa. So for us, we decided together with Chris and the team that we were going to focus on not only financial access to the Bitcoin meetups, but also how we can solve this problem of energy access. And we did a bit of research for about 8 months, and we realized that there was a connection between mining, cryptocurrency, and energy, obviously, because you need electricity to mine. And the biggest beneficiaries of the Bitcoin ecosystem were the miners, in addition to the hodlers. So we knew if you're not a hodler, you have to earn this cryptocurrency somehow. So and then also at the same time we had the Ponzi schemes and the pyramid schemes, which were sort of very prevalent in Africa, and they were sort of the evil way to earn crypto, because a lot of people were getting to those systems. I remember there was even BitConnect. There were so many systems that came, and they really sort of disrupted the Bitcoin space on the African continent. So we really said that, through that experience, we have to push a legit way for people to get into the cryptocurrency space without necessarily spending money. Because I myself had bought Bitcoin at the top, I had to wait 2 years to break even. And if you don't have much resources, it can be quite a painful experience. So we did not want to go through the speculation route. We wanted to go through the innovation route. And mining is a very key component, at least essentially in the beginning, for building these ecosystems. So we've been working on the whive protocol since, I believe, either 2017, 2018, early 2018, and sort of customizing it for our local experience, where we want many people to adopt it. And for that reason, we focused on what we call a CPU mining model versus the GPU mining model and the ASIC mining model that is utilized for both mining Ethereum and Bitcoin. And actually, the reason I knew GPU wouldn't work in Africa so well is when I went to the United States, I went to Best Buy to look for the GPU cards. I found there were no cards. They're all missing. People had bought them. The gamers are complaining that they can't get gaming cards anymore because all the miners have them. So that really solidified in my mind that a mining model for Africa and Southeast Asia and much of the emerging world would have to be based on the CPU. And so we now began to research how exactly we'd come about and build that platform.
Wow, it's fascinating. Yeah, backpedaling just a little bit, the reason why I met John is because of Sinclair Skinner's. Many people just kind of connect the dots. BitHub.Africa is the technical portion of Black Blockchain Summit. Black Blockchain Summit is the oldest blockchain conference in the U.S. at Howard University, and Sinclair Skinner is, the face, the organizer, the guy that's been pulling us all together to talk and speak and talk to each other and teach. So he's definitely the programming, and then the back end of all the cameras and everyone getting videoed, and then the lovely, I should have threw on my shuka today, the lovely gifts and stuff from Kenya. Things, that was all you and Christian also from Democratic Republic of Congo coming with, oh yes, great clothing too. You can dress up, but coming and actually putting all the bells and whistles together, because Kenya is way ahead, especially if you're talking about Black people, is way ahead of even African Americans in the space. We still are strongly speculative and very not much into the nuts and bolts and bells and whistles of the infrastructure and building everything. So let's talk a little bit about whive specifically. Why did you not just build on top of Bitcoin? Why was it important, do you think, to develop this different protocol? And then how is it going to work for like a layperson like ourselves that are in the diaspora, or as compared to people who are actually in the tropical regions of the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, that can most benefit from having this coin and mining it? So how is it actually going to work?
Yeah, so great question. So the whive protocol is complementary or supplementary to the Bitcoin protocol. So what we did is we did build on top of Bitcoin, but what we did is we forked the Bitcoin source code. We've not forked the network, though we forked the UTXOs. So if you're a Bitcoiner, I believe with 0.2 Bitcoin and above, you'll be able to claim an equal amount of whives on the next release that's coming up, just to bring in the whole Bitcoin ecosystem on board. And the reason we did so is we did not want to invent the wheel. A lot of brain power has gone into building the Bitcoin source code. There've been over 500 developers. And when we looked at sort of the cost benefit of building a blockchain from scratch, we saw that it was virtually impossible for us to attempt to build a blockchain from scratch and then have the confidence that the funds of the people who either mine on the protocol or use the tokens as a utility token to trade energy would be secure. So we needed a secure platform to build on. And it took us, by the way, 2 years to go through the Bitcoin source code and really understand how to safely fork it into now what we're calling the whive protocol. It wasn't an easy exercise. A lot of coins simply just go get a tool and fork the coin and just rename the files and then launch. We did not want to do that. We wanted to go and like surgeons, remove the code that we wanted to change and then integrate the code that we wanted to add. So we took code. We took code from a project called Yes Power, which I believe has been developed by OpenWall. So it's a bunch of professors, mathematicians who've come up with an ASIC resistant protocol called Yes Power, and I think they were also thinking along the lines of energy as well. And then we customized it to have what we call solar reliability indices. So we look at the regions of the world and then pick the regions that are solar friendly and then bias the protocol to favor those regions, which is a work in progress. So it's not just a protocol that is a copy of Bitcoin. It does something unique that adds onto what Bitcoin already does. So in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you have sidechains. So you have the liquid sidechain, which is a similar concept, but they peg onto Bitcoin 1-to-1. Our chain is an auxiliary chain. So we peg on Bitcoin, I believe, 5-to-1 roughly. So there will be about 100 million coins mined by the year 2040. So we have a 20-year mining schedule. And the reason we chose 20 years was to allow for fair distribution of the tokens to people who participate on the network, and also to give us enough time to build Melanin.Solar, which is a use case that is really gonna drive the adoption of renewable energy in Africa and beyond. So we're not in a rush. We're giving ourselves a long period of time to have the protocol roll out, and also enough time to train enough Africans and even African Americans. We worked with Professor Todd Shan from Howard University. Okay. We actually had one of his students write the algorithm. The original algorithm was not even written by us. It was written by a student in Howard University.
Howard, right.
And he wrote it in Python. So we took his algorithm and changed it to C++, because the whive protocol, like Bitcoin, is written in C and C++, which are sort of low-level programming languages. So we want to build an ecosystem of engineers who can mine and validate both on the whive network and the Bitcoin network, because if you can do whive, you can easily do Bitcoin. It's pretty much similar. But we also want to build developers who can code at the low-level programming languages like C and C++, not just Python and JavaScript. Because a lot of people, for example, in the Ethereum ecosystem, they come from that ecosystem and they're building applications that, are very buggy, that crash. and you're talking about people's money. So we didn't want to go that way as well. We didn't want to build on top of Ethereum because for that reason. Yeah, so it's the right decision, but it takes much longer as we go, to come out with releases, and that sometimes frustrates people in the community. But we believe it's the most robust way to develop the protocol that we need. And the other thing also I must say is we also didn't want to rush the release of the protocol on the market because we want the roadmap for the protocol to be complete. So Whive will launch in its second release as a fully feature complete protocol, which means that technically we are compliant with like SEC rules and from whichever country, the US, because we're not making promises. The protocol is already coming as a utility. So that's another reason from a legal standpoint why we wanted to go slow and make sure we have the protocol ready before we start advocating for people to adopt it.
So just to back up a little bit in case people missed the connection, Howard University professor Todd Shern is actually a co-author of your green paper, commonly known as a white paper. So there's a connection from Black Blockchain Summit associated with Sinclair Skinner's lead. And Sinclair actually also taught at Howard at some point in his career. And then you have an active professor at Howard University that is a co-author of Whive blockchain. So there's always this Kenyan African American connection to this project. I've seen you talk another time when you gave an example, and I'd like you to give this example as well. You've used the Maasai as an example in their traditional lifestyle. What would this product mean in terms of them? So to kind of give people a front end kind of perspective versus a technical perspective. Melanin.Solar is up and running as a company on top of Whive. What does this mean for people who are living traditional lifestyles in Africa in terms of their economics?
Yeah, so we believe that the way traditional African societies were set up in the age of our great grandparents is that they were distributed. They believed in distributing themselves just for survival, and living in communal setups. And I think if you look at the ideals of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general, it's about decentralizing ownership of either assets or money in the case of Bitcoin. And we wanted to also live by those ideals. So we partnered with an organization called HIVOS East Africa that funded our pilot for the Melanin.Solar solution. And we decided to pilot this solution amongst the Maasai community in the rural villages in a county called Kajiado. So they live pretty much in the old way, although they have adopted some modernities like education and schools. And we decided what to do is, together with HIVOS, deploy a solar crowd grid system. And so basically what this is you can imagine a dispensary and a school and a church, which are co-located within a radius of 300 meters, but they do not have access to on-grid power. So what we did is we set up solar panels on each of these entities, and then we interconnected them by laying power cables under the ground. And then we deployed what we call the Melanin.Solar Smart Box solution, which has two components or three components. It has the Bitcoin blockchain for value transfer over the Lightning Network, because that's where the liquidity is highest in crypto. And then it has the Whive protocol software for mining rewards. So whatever energy these institutions are getting that they're not utilizing, that energy ideally should be used for mining these rewards. And in that sense, we store that solar energy as digital tokens. So mining is just a process to turn solar energy into a different form of energy, which we call crypto or digital tokens. And these tokens can now be later used as for value exchange, and in the case of Bitcoin, as a store of value. So they could swap into Bitcoin and keep it as a store of value, as savings, for example, and they could use that, the Bitcoin tokens to exchange energy between each other. So the idea in the second phase, which we are going to do, and I'm actually fundraising for the company to do this, is to plug in households that are near these institutions to start buying or sharing this energy. And the way that's going to be done, it's going to be done using the tokens, and it's also going to be automated. So the system can tell, which is the third component, which is a machine learning component. It can tell through net metering how much energy this household needs, and using the Lightning Network, acquire that energy into that household. So we are building what we call a crowd grid energy ecosystems powered by solar, using the blockchain for accountability and transparency, and then using cryptocurrencies for value exchange. And then also at the same time, we want to train the local community, there are a lot of young people in that community and in Africa in general, on how to maintain these systems. So this is a holistic solution that when it comes into a community, it benefits the whole community because they are stakeholders of that system. They benefit directly from that system. And our job as Melanin.Solar is just to facilitate the backend software, if you like, and build the user interfaces that make it easy for these communities to use. So this is something that we've just started a few months ago, and we want to do over the next 1 to 2 years. And we think in that time we can get it working so that it can scale pretty much anywhere in the world.
Wow, that's great. I mean, the way you're strategically layering the different elements of this ecosystem are great. I wanted to go back and reference the fact that you said that they were ASIC resistant, which and what the implications of that for people who don't know what ASIC are.
Yeah, so ASIC is I forget what the acronym stands for. It's integrated circuits, asynchronous, I think, integrated circuits.
Mm-hmm.
And they are specialized computers that are built just for mining Bitcoin or Bitcoin-like coins.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem which we actually had with whive is when we released the first version, we immediately had people from Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, and Romania starting to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the Chinese come in and starting to mine the whive tokens, and they
Mm-hmm.
brought in a lot of hash power.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first real test on whive, whether it was ASIC resistant.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that the Chinese, very cleverly had created a data center of small CPU computing devices, which yeah, so they created a data center of many small computers,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to game the network. Of course, that's expected with cryptocurrency. You're always going to have people trying to break the system,
Mm-hmm.
which is why Bitcoin is so secure, because you have literally billions of dollars of attacks on it almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our first sort of validation that yes, the system worked. It was ASIC resistant, but there are ways to game the system. So which is why we went back to Professor Todd Shine at Howard, and
Mm-hmm.
we were able now to come up with the optimization algorithms, which we're working on. And we want also now to get those released and get them tested. And even with the Chinese having a big role, whive remains the cryptocurrency project that Africans have participated a lot in, relative to other players. So
Mm-hmm.
we've had a lot of mining from Rwanda. We've had a lot of mining from Kenya, Mauritius as well. We've had mining from places like Turkey and interesting countries around the world. And the idea is to ensure that based on solar reliability, we're able to more fairly. it will never be perfect, but it will be more fair, and it will reward people based on their energy sort of their energy needs going forward.
Mm-hmm. So we got a question from one of our Facebook participants. Will there be smart contract capability on Whive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Whive will have exactly the same scripting language that Bitcoin has. So it will have very limited smart contract capability. In fact, I can probably only think of one use case of notarization. And the reason why that is important is we don't want to flood the network with spam. So, for example, Ethereum has a lot of smart contracts that are, spam, and they flood the network, and it results in what you call high gas fees. So, for example, I was doing an Ethereum transaction the other day, and I had to pay $300 just to do that transaction. So that would not be sustainable on for the use cases that we're trying to do. So we're taking the same exact philosophy of Bitcoin in limiting the scripting capability because we have a strong use case. And a strong use case is good enough going forward.
We also got another question. Will you be at Bitcoin 2021 in Miami?
Probably, yes. I already have my tickets. I don't know if America will let me in because of Corona. So I'm planning to be there. I'm looking forward to meeting anyone who will be there.
Now, you have something coming up this weekend. We've been talking about it briefly in the group. In terms of the United States, do you have any data on how many miners, is there any mining tech from the United States on Whive? And what can people expect and find out more about what's happening, which is the equivalent of noon Eastern, this time basically, noon Eastern time in the United States that you're producing on Saturday?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Yes, we have a lot of miners from the United States. My co-founder is based in the United States, so I think he's been able to bring some people in there. We really want to push it across HBCUs in terms of something that we're doing at BitHub.Africa called the Melanin.Academy, and we already have course materials that are available at melanin.academy. www.melanin.academy, which is our tutorial website. So we have our first community webinar. I think it's 12 noon Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So we'll essentially be taking people through this ecosystem that we have built. Yes. Excuse me, let me release somebody here for 1 second. Okay. Apologies.
All right. So while John is having that, it's been posted in the group previously that there is they have a meetup page in which they have this workshop, and you have to register, so you can't just like this tune in and join, because they want you to be aware of the equipment that's available. So you have to have like at least an old laptop computer, because it's a 2-hour workshop, if I understand correctly, and they're actually going to take you through the paces of actually setting up a whive mining rig, which is something that's been needed because it's coming out of group that a lot of misunderstandings of whether, and I know you had something new to say about the Macs as well. There's been a problem that was noted in the past that people who are on Mac computers versus PCs were having a difficult time setting up. And so most of the people in your Telegram, and there is a Whive Telegram, were basically either on old laptops or they were on Raspberry Pis or Odroids. But there's been some new information in terms of if you have an old Macintosh, what you can do. So if you could speak on that.
Yeah. So we're very thankful for the people who have Macs, because they've been very patient actually for over a year. I think I'm not too familiar with the details, but the Macintosh releases have a bit of complication, particularly with Catalina. So we're working on ways to make it easy for Macintosh people to come in. But mining in general is essentially a Linux. If you want to mine cryptocurrencies, you have to make yourself conversant with Linux and Ubuntu in particular, which is a nice African name that talks about what you're trying to do to bring people together. So we really focus on Ubuntu because we know it's scalable. And most of the miners that we have on the network, actually pretty much all of them are on Ubuntu. For purposes of the classes, we have created what we call software downloads or binaries that people will be able to download and do some mining on their laptops. We don't recommend that you mine for long on your laptop because you'll spoil your laptop fun. But I think mining for a day or two should be enough to get you some rewards and sort of get you used to the idea of earning rewards from CPU power. So we recommend Raspberry Pis, and you need to also get cooling fans for the Raspberry Pis for long-term mining, because the cooling fans extend the life of the Raspberry CPU. And what Melanin.Solar now, our company will do is come up with custom hardware that does this on the go, plug and play. So that's why we have Melanin.Solar, is to create a custom device that allows for mining using the whive protocol and also supports the Bitcoin Lightning Network, because we believe the Lightning Network will win in terms of crypto as a medium of exchange or payments. So we're really encouraging mining through whive and payments through Lightning on Bitcoin.
Yeah, so
basically you've combined payments, energy transfer, and crypto mining in one platform. Is that correct? Okay. Did you hear me?
Exactly. So what's going to win is what we call a hybrid stack. So picking and choosing the best of everything and really bringing it together to create a solution.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. I think there's a little bit of a delay, but we're hearing you.
Am I back? Yeah. So I was saying.
Yes.
Yeah. So what will win is combining protocols, and I believe that we found the right mix for our solar energy use case. And this is pretty common. If you look at any app on your phone, it uses different protocols and combines them in different ways. It uses TCP/IP for routing packets. It uses HTTP and www for browsing, and it uses SMTP for email notifications as well. So the idea is to create the right mix of protocols to create a solution. And that's why I don't believe in Bitcoin maximalism, by the way, because Bitcoin can only be really useful as a store of value, and that's where we want to keep it. We don't want to add too many things on Bitcoin because we can risk breaking the entire system. We can complement Bitcoin with other protocols that now specialize on different application layers or different market segments.
Exactly. So, we have a couple of comments in the thread about being new. So I just want to kind of back up to give people who may not be familiar with some of the terms. Linux is an operating system, just like how you have Windows operating system, or you have Catalina, the different versions of Mac operating systems. So Linux is actually been around for quite some time, from the early .com days, and a lot of the servers that serve the back end of a lot of high end websites more than likely are using Linux. Your Googles and Amazon, they're not using what a consumer would use in terms of Windows or whatever. So even if you have a laptop, a PC laptop, you're going to want to do an install of Ubuntu Linux, which is a brand of, like, kind of have Catalina is a type of brand of Mac OS. You're going to want to do an install if you're preparing for Saturday of Ubuntu Linux. And there are plenty of YouTube videos that you can find on how to do that. Something I have to prepare for as well. So just to kind of, backpedal a little bit to give some, because people are hearing these terms, they're hearing Linux, they're hearing Python, they're hearing C, but they get real confused because they're not used to hearing the difference. So if you think of Linux in terms of, okay, well, you have Windows, you have Mac OS, you have Android, it's an operating system so you won't be using your PC with its Windows operating system. You have to have a PC in which you're willing to install an additional operating system, or if it's really old and you just want to replace it altogether, you've got to have Ubuntu Linux OS installed in order to be able to then have the software to mine Whive.
Well, actually, for the class, we've created binaries for Windows and Linux, and I think we're working on Mac. But for sort of continuous mining, you'd have to specialize on Linux probably.
Okay, so then we'll be able to. So you'll be able to shut on and off your mining if it's on Windows, and in the future date. So that's good to know. So then people don't feel like they have to have all the racks and everything necessary to make sure that nothing catches on fire because they're having it 24/7. They can toggle it on and off and still use Windows OS. So I learned something new as well. From the perspective of why, being an American, being in, central New Jersey, and Bob is in Harlem, what is the use case aside from, just mining to have Whive on? What is our use case for participating with Whive?
Yeah, so the one that I'd really mentioned was really the education piece, because we want one of the things Professor Todd Chan was, telling me about Howard was there wasn't really a way to motivate, for example, the students to get practically involved in computer science projects. So this is a good way to do so because they'll literally be earning money while sort of doing the practical exercises using the Whive protocol. And it gives them a future skill that they can transfer to other projects that are relevant to your communities there in the United States, because they'll all rely on either proof of work, proof of stake, or some form of proof of validation. And mining is really a first principle in that space. So, I would say, I would never call myself a blockchain engineer if I didn't know how to mine cryptocurrencies. So it's very important for the younger people getting into the space, and even enthusiasts in general, to start from here so that they can at least be able to say that they know how blockchain works from its fundamental computing principles.
What is your list of languages or operating system that people don't know where to start a lot of times? What is your go-to list of that people should know? I know we put it on the screen already, Melanin.Academy, but in terms of just speaking about it, what is that go-to list of programming languages that you think people could self-study now?
Yeah, great question. I would say if I was a total newbie, I would start with Python, because Python is almost written in the English language. It's basically sort of like almost speaking English, and then I would build applications at that stage, and then now try and translate them into one of the other languages. PHP is a good one. I have a background in PHP, and PHP is actually based off, I believe, C++. So the more experience you get in those three languages, from a blockchain point of view, leads you down now to C++ and C, which are now operate at the assembly level. And I should say that I know for sure that in the US, there's a huge demand for blockchain developers. So in terms of jobs. So this is a way for students and upcoming engineers to differentiate themselves on the job market by learning these blockchain skills along the way. A very important thing that I had to learn in the last 2 years was Git, the Git standard, and it's GIT. if you've heard of GitHub, GitHub is based off Git, and it's essentially a language that allows you to manage your source code together with others at the global stage on GitHub. So that's a very important skill that's missing even here in Kenya, that's not taught in the schools in Kenya, that I think people need to learn. It's fairly easy to learn, take you probably a couple of weeks if you put your head into it. So I would say learn Git, learn how to mine, learn how to code in Python, and then pick it up from there. I would also say that the Ethereum ecosystem is also very interesting in that you can build smart contract applications fairly quickly. So you'd want to learn Solidity JavaScript, because some people have that taste. They like sort of the DeFi, they like sort of the smart contracts. Not everyone is a sort of low-level engineer like myself. So for those kind of people, I'd recommend JavaScript, Node.js, React, and Solidity, which is now Ethereum's language. And I believe the other blockchains, like even Binance Smart Chain, they all use Solidity. So
yeah, Tron, and they're all copies of Ethereum, Tron, Binance, and I think that Dash is building its own testnet on top of its proof of work blockchain. They're trying to they have something in testnet, so everyone's going to try to, because the front end money is coming from people who are interested in participating in DeFi or NFTs, and so you have to have that kind of proof of stake layer to have that kind of liquidity for that tokenization. But question I have for you is, as an African engineer, what are your thoughts on so many projects? There've been so many projects later, SafeMoon, 88 Cardano, and they use this tagline, "We're going to come to Africa." How easy is it to just come to Africa in with your token and make some type of impact or change? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I always laugh at those campaigns, especially if they're not partnering with Africans on the ground, because Africa is 54 countries. So, and these countries are very different from each other, different cultures, 2,600 languages. So where exactly are you coming to in Africa? You have to be more specific that I'm coming to solve a certain problem with a certain community. And to me, it just looks a bit, like, snake oil salesmen. They sort of talk about somewhere exotic and say, I'm going to hunt the Black Panther there. And they've never been there. So they might find, some lions that will jump on them. So I think they need to be more specific, but of course we welcome them, because anything that attracts attention to Africa is very good, because we have a huge youth population and we need to maximize opportunities for them.
Aside from your project, what in Africa, in terms of blockchain, even in other countries other than Kenya, what do you see that you like, that you think we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, from the top of my head, I really liked Ethereum, because Vitalik actually came twice to Kenya and was actively trying to engage students at some universities here. And he's a geek, so it's not easy for him to do so. So I really respected them for that. But I would say Africa right now is being driven by the Nigerian narrative. They're really the number one adopters of Bitcoin at an individual level. The trade volumes on peer-to-peer networks in Nigeria are just out of this world. I think they're almost matching the US. And it's really showing the use case of Bitcoin as something that's empowering people to control their own money and be their own bank. I think that narrative will extend across Africa, because we do share that same problem of lack of financial access. I think there are also other interesting projects in terms of looking at what we can do with digital identity, because identity is key to access services. I'm not sure if that would be a blockchain solution necessarily, but I think it ties into blockchain in that you can now give people credit scores, help them access loans, maybe on DeFi, building on top of those application stacks. So the market for cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general is Africa, because we're talking about 1.2 billion people who don't have the services that you guys have. So if there are any black startups, there are any entrepreneurs who are looking for good use cases for cryptocurrency, I would encourage them to start, connecting with Africans, and they can join. I think they can join Deidra's forums, your forum. They can join our forums at BitHub.Africa, and we can just begin to close the circle and connect the dots.
Yeah, they're absolutely. I'm going to let you hold a minute, Bob, because I just wanted to press upon. I think that we as African Americans have a tendency to be very naive of how ethnically diverse Africa are. How many ethnic groups are in Kenya alone? Wainaina?
So Kenya is about 43, 44.
43, 44 ethnic groups. And then if you compare that to Nigeria, I think they have something like 200 ethnic groups. It's a lot. So this kind of idea that you cannot, don't think that you're just going to go to a country and then just talk to one person and have that reflective of a particular nation that's incredible, far more diverse than we can conceive. In terms of, if you think about the indigenous ethnic groups of France, it's like 4 different ethnic groups. I'm not talking about people who have migrated there, but you talk about Franks and that sort of stuff. So when it comes to European countries, 4 ethnic groups, 3 ethnic groups, 6 ethnic groups. But when you get to Africa, even I think it is Madagascar has something like 18 ethnic groups. As some of the smallest. Ethiopia is like 80 different ethnic groups. It's tremendously diverse. Nigeria, I think they have more languages than they even have ethnic. I think the language number is something like 300. So 250 million people, more than 200 ethnic groups, and 300 different spoken languages, even if they're using, English as the quote unquote lingua franca, so to speak. You have to understand the diversity of these 54 African nations, and you have to link up with Africans. You can't, even African Americans, we can't naively think, well, I'm going to go up there and then just as we're going to introduce and it's just going to work. You just got to talk to people and try to figure out what are some localized solutions that maybe can start smaller and then can expand into several different ethnic groups, several different regions, and then possibly a national solution or a cross-national solution. So, Bob, you had something that you wanted to say?
Oh, yeah. So, Wainaina, first of all, I love the strategy of the platform that you've developed in terms of addressing, some of the specific problems and solutions for Africa. But I also see that your platform has potential for scaling in other areas, whether it be Caribbean, South America, even in the U.S., anywhere where there is significant solar energy, the opportunity to combine solar energy and payments and and blockchain and distribution of the energy. So I wanted to ask you in terms of your thoughts of scaling beyond Africa, and did you have any specific plans in that regard?
Yes, exactly. We like to say that if it works in Africa, it will work everywhere else. So we're definitely building this solution in the toughest environment that you can imagine, with some of the brilliant people and the most cultured people on the planet. And we're sure such a solution will be able to scale across the world, where we need it to scale amongst our communities. And I've been having calls with people from the Caribbean, and they're excited about what we're doing. And I think the best thing about it is, and Deidra keeps saying this, is with cryptos, everyone is a stakeholder. And we need to shift to that mentality where it's not a corporation called Melanin that's coming to colonize you guys. We are Melanin. We are building this platform together, and it will only work if the community helps develop it, helps maintain it, and advocates for it. Across the world. So Um, this is essentially our ethos and what we are working towards.
All right. So, any last minute thoughts? We've kept you for an hour. Any last minute thoughts or comments about some of your relations and your travels, either coming to the United States or going to Europe? What's on the roadmap for you beyond Miami, in terms of sharing the word of what's happening with whive and Melanin.Solar?
Yeah, I think, thank you for asking, because I think I'd forgotten to mention is we need UI UX developers. And I know for a fact that we have a lot of Black American creatives in the US who are really, really good at this. So we would like to expand our team beyond just Africans to come and help us design the look and feel of these applications. So that's another key reason why I'm coming to the US to connect with some of my friends there and begin to make this connection so that when the time comes, we're able to use all our skill sets around the world to develop these applications. The initial applications actually, ironically, will be desktop applications, which are more accessible to people like yourselves in the US. So we're sort of doing parallel systems where we do the hardware solution in Africa and we do the software solutions in the US, and then we merge that together. And then, of course, we're looking for people interested in funding Melanin.Solar, and we're also looking for miners as well. So we invite everyone to our class on Saturday, and tell a friend to come and join. If you have that cousin who you don't understand, who is a total geek with computers, that's the person we're looking for, because he might be the person who helps us, take this solution to the next level.
And just a slight correction on what you're seeing on the screen. Academy ends with a Y, not a U. But other than that, those are the URLs that are important to know. Also, I want to comment publicly, because I've never said this to you. I love the logo of whive. That B connection is so fundamentally African and so fundamentally ancient. I don't really cross my wires too much, but I probably have more written content about Kemet and Kush in ancient Egypt than I do on crypto. And the actual title of the quote unquote pharaoh is actually a Greek term taken from Per-Ah, which means the great house, and actually refers to the entire royal family, not specifically the ruler. But the ruler term was Nasut Biti, and Biti was the bee. Nasut was the head, the plant. So it's very agricultural based. Classically African civilization, but the idea of the bee or the wasp was extremely significant. So when I saw that logo, I was just like, oh, look at that. So can you give some background on how that logo evolved before we close out?
Well, actually, funny story. I think when I was 10, I was once stung by a very fat African bee. And I never forgot the pain. So I had SMS texting platform that I built 10 years ago that was also called WebHive. So that application actually got killed by regulations. There's some regulations that came that sort of made it not viable. So when I was thinking of this blockchain, I decided to go back with something that I'd sort of created before that came out of an experience as a 10-year-old. But the bee is a sustainer of civilizations. It does much of the pollination in agriculture. So, and they work together in sort of a hive mind. And I think it symbolizes what we need to do as Black people around the world, which is to work together.
Yeah, that very ancient and very understanding of the connection between nature and also human survival is this kind of necessary for different ecosystems to exist for us to live. The bees disappear, we're gone shortly after. So we have a question on the screen. Tawan Muhammad asks, how do we register for the class on
All
Saturday?
right. Let me see if I can pull up the link.
So while he's
Uh,
pulling up the link, I also talk about that. I think it's Ethiopia, Lalibela, the rock sculpture church is there. But the rules of Lalibela, the title was also tied to like King of the Bees and stuff like that. So it's a very long standing, definitely Nile Valley connection to Whive and their logo. So even though John is questioning with being stung by a bee at 10, is like something about the ruler, the original, the oldest titles of rulers has been associated with bees. So I always find that kind of fascinating.
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I shared the link on private
Yes,
chat.
I'm going to put
So
it on.
Yeah, he's going to put it on the main chat, so that people can register. Again, it's noon Eastern time, Saturday, May 15th, 7 p.m. East African time, and people will be able to, especially if you have a laptop, actually go to the meetup so you can actually see the itemized list of what you should have prepared. And then it's free. There's no cost. You just have to register, and then it's going to be about 2 hours or so. But it at least gives us firsthand connection to what's necessary and what's needed to kind of have an introduction to whive mining.
So that link is also in the comments on Facebook and on YouTube. So you can go directly into the comments and link on that link. I would go and register right now. Get your spot. Spots are limited.
Mm-mm.
for sure.
All right, Wainaina, thank you very much for taking this hour with us. We were a little bit over an hour and 7 minutes or so, but definitely giving us a whole lot of information and hopefully empowering people to kind of push back about some of the myths in terms of the Bitcoin blockchain and its hashing as it relates to yours, because you're carrying on that legacy. Why is proof of work? And unfortunately, people run rampant with a certain amount of myths and not understanding that a proof of work ecosystem can also be a renewable energy connected system, and that could actually change the livelihoods for people that are living in tropical regions around the world, where you center it, that their resources, the resources they receive quite a bit of, becomes an energy source, a renewable energy source for not only their region, but also the world. So thank you very much for joining us at Black People in Cryptocurrency. And it's important to know that Whive is an ABoB pick, always been on Black. We have 4 different picks, and Whive was the most recently added, although it was first of mine. It was just a matter of saying how ready was our network to actually have a conversation about mining. That's something that's definitely a hurdle that the African American community has to get over in terms of things being quote unquote too technical. No, we've got to get that technical in order to be able to have the ecosystems that best benefit us. So,
And I also want to extend an invitation that this is not your only appearance here. We want to have you back for regular updates on all of your projects. And I also offer you the invitation that if you make it to Bitcoin 2021 in Miami in the first week of June, and you want to do any live reports from the event, you can do it on your phone, and we can do a similar type of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be this long, but we would love to continue to hear from you and make this platform available for you to continue to share information, because I think you started something that's very, very important, and we want to keep this dialogue open between our brothers in Africa and our brothers and sisters in Africa and our brothers and sisters here in the U.S. and all over the diaspora. So, so we
Sure. Thank you
appreciate.
for the yeah
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I really look forward to seeing what we can do together. So, asante sana, Bob and Deidra.
Caribou, caribou. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. This has been Black People in Cryptocurrency live on Facebook and YouTube. Share this with all of your friends. There's some powerful information in this hour and 10 minutes. So get it out there, and you will see more of Wainaina here again in the near future. Thanks for
Go
watching.
ahead.